My name is Sarah, and I'm telling you this from a place that doesn't exist. Not anymore. Or maybe it's the only place that truly ever did. It started, as these things often do, with an inheritance. A letter, crisp and formal, stating I was the sole beneficiary of my grandmother's estate. My grandmother, Elizabeth Ashwood, a woman I hadn't seen since I was 7, a woman my parents spoke of in hushed, pitying tones, a woman they called eccentric at best and unhinged at worst.
The estate was Ashwood Manor, Blackwood Creek, Pennsylvania. The address itself sounded like something out of a pulp novel. I packed my meager belongings, my life feeling as adrift as a forgotten buoy, and pointed my beat-up sedan towards the forgotten corners of the Rust Belt. I needed a fresh start, a clean slate, a reason to stop staring at my reflection and wondering who I was supposed to be. Blackwood Creek promised isolation, and at that point, isolation felt like a balm.
The drive was long, the landscape slowly morphing from familiar suburban sprawl into something ancient and overgrown. Highways narrowed to state routes, then to winding county roads that dipped into valleys choked with thick, dark trees. The air grew heavy, damp, smelling of pine, and something else, something stagnant, like old earth.
Blackwood Creek itself was less a town and more a wound in the landscape. A single main street, barely a block long, lined with skeletal storefronts. Paint peeled from every surface. Windows were either boarded up or stared out blankly like vacant eyes. A faded sign, barely legible, declared, "Welcome to Blackwood Creek, Est 1888. Below it, someone had spray painted, "Abandon Hope." A cruel joke or a warning? I saw maybe 2 cars and 3 people in the entire town. An elderly woman, her face a road nap of wrinkles, watched me from the porch of a collapsing house, her gaze unnervingly direct. A man with a grimy beard sat on an overturned crate outside what looked like a defunct general store, nursing a bottle in a brown paper bag, not even bothering to turn his head as I passed. This wasn't just quiet, it was dead. The kind of dead that felt like something was holding its breath.
Ashwood Manor sat on a hill overlooking the desolate town, a sprawling Victorian monstrosity that seemed to scrape the low, bruised clouds. It was black with age, its gables sharp as teeth against the gray sky, its turrets like accusing fingers. A wrought iron fence, rusted and broken in places, marked the perimeter, overgrown with thorny vines. The gate creaked open like a sigh as I pushed it, revealing a long gravel driveway disappearing beneath a canopy of ancient oaks.
As I drove closer, the house grew larger, more oppressive. Every window seemed to watch me. The porch sagged, the paint had long since flaked away, revealing raw, weathered wood. There was no lawn, just a chaotic wilderness of weeds and gnarled bushes that clawed at the foundation. My heart hammered, a frantic drum against my ribs. This wasn't a fresh start. It was an entanglement.
I killed the engine, and the sudden silence was absolute. Thick, broken only by the distant, mournful cry of a crow. I stepped out, the gravel crunching under my boots, and the air hit me. It was colder up here, much colder than down in the valley, and it carried a distinct smell. Dust, decay, and something else, something faintly metallic, like old blood.
The front door, an enormous slab of dark carved wood, stood slightly ajar. I pushed it slowly. It groaned, a deep, guttural sound, revealing a cavernous entryway plunged into gloom. Dust motes danced in the sparse shafts of light that pierced the grime-coated windows. A grand staircase, its banister a twisted serpent of dark wood, spiraled upwards into darkness. The air inside was heavy, still, like a held breath. It was the air of a tomb. "Hello?" My voice was a pathetic whisper,
swallowed instantly by the vastness.
I found the light switch, fumbling for it, and the single bulb in the entryway flickered weakly, casting long, dancing shadows. My eyes adjusted, trying to make sense of the overwhelming clutter. The house was a museum of forgotten lives. Tarps draped over furniture like ghostly shrouds. Every surface was coated in a thick layer of dust, smelling of aged paper and something else, something faintly sweet, almost sickly. I walked further in, my boots echoing on the polished wood floor. A vast living room to my left, dominated by a cold stone fireplace and dark, heavy furniture. To my right, a dining room, a long table set for a phantom dinner party. A faint, almost imperceptible chill snaked up my spine, not from the cold, but from something deeper, a feeling of profound unease.
I ascended the grand staircase, each step a groan of protest. Upstairs, a long, dark hallway stretched before me. Doors lined either side, some ajar, revealing glimpses of empty, dusty rooms. I pushed open the first door I came to. A bedroom, clearly my grandmother's. A four-poster bed, draped in dust-covered sheets, dominated the room. On a nightstand, a tarnished silver picture frame held a faded photograph. I picked it up. A young woman, her face striking, intelligent eyes, a hint of sadness around her mouth. My grandmother. And standing beside her, a stern-faced man with a severe gaze and dark, intense eyes. Elias Thorne. The name was etched on the back. I didn't recognize him.
I set the frame down, the chill in the room intensifying. It wasn't just dust and decay. There was a palpable sense of presence, a feeling of being watched. I spun around, my eyes darting into the corners of the room, into the shadows. Nothing, just the settling sighs of the old house. But the feeling persisted, a cold hand on the back of my neck.
I found a small, almost hidden door in the back of the room, leading to what must have been a study. Bookshelves crammed with leather-bound volumes, a massive mahogany desk, and in the center of the desk, untouched by the general chaos, sat a single plain leather-bound journal and an old ornate music box. I picked up the journal first. The leather was soft, worn smooth in places. Elizabeth Ashwood, 1957, was embossed on the front, my grandmother's handwriting.
As I opened the journal, a faint metallic scent, like iron, wafted from its pages. The first few entries were mundane, observations about the weather, chores. But then the tone shifted. October 12th, 1957. The dreams are more frequent now, the whispers louder. They speak of the children. My breath hitched. Children? What children? I looked at the music box. It was beautiful. Dark wood inlaid with mother of pearl, depicting a weeping willow. I carefully wound the key. A delicate, melancholic tune filled the room. A lullaby. It was achingly beautiful, but infused with a profound sadness that seemed to seep into the very walls. As the tune played, I felt a faint brushing against my arm, like a cobweb. I swiped at it, but there was nothing there, just the cold, the music, and the tightening knot of dread in my stomach.
The music box wound down, its final note lingering, echoing. Then, silence. A heavy, stifling silence. I closed the journal, its secrets feeling too heavy, too dark. I needed to eat, to sleep, to try and shake off the oppressive atmosphere of this place. But sleep didn't come easily. The old house groaned and creaked around me, each sound amplified in the vast silence. I lay in the dusty bed, listening. The wind outside seemed to whisper names I couldn't quite catch. And then, I heard it. Faint, distant, but undeniable. The soft, tinkling melody of the music box. It couldn't be. I had left it on the desk downstairs. It couldn't just start playing on its own. I sat up, heart pounding. The sound was coming from downstairs, exactly where I'd left it.
It played a few notes, then stopped abruptly, as if a hand had come down on it. My imagination, I told myself. Just the house settling. Old houses make noise. But the lullaby, with its haunting melody, played on a loop in my head.
The next morning, the sun was a weak, watery thing behind the perpetual haze that clung to Blackwood Creek. I ventured downstairs, coffee cup in hand. The music box sat exactly where I had left it. I stared at it, then at the journal. My hand trembled slightly as I picked up the journal again. I flipped to a new entry. November 3rd, 1957. The cold spots are not imaginary. They follow me. And the whispers, they are pleading for release, for justice. My gaze drifted to the corners of the room. Cold spots. I had felt them. A shiver traced its way down my spine. This wasn't just my imagination playing tricks. This was real.
I spent the next few days in a haze of unpacking and researching. My laptop was my only connection to the outside world, and even that felt tenuous with the weak signal. I typed Blackwood Creek, Pennsylvania history into the search bar. What I found was patchy, unsettling. The town had indeed been a thriving mining community, but in 1928, a catastrophic mine collapse had effectively ended its prosperity. The reports were vague, almost deliberately so, about casualties. Most articles focused on the economic impact, the closure of the mine, the subsequent exodus of residents. There was almost no mention of the people themselves. I found a few old newspaper archives. Ashwood Orphanage Fire, 1929. My breath caught. Ashwood Orphanage. In Ashwood Manor? The article was brief, just a small column on an inner page. A fire had consumed the orphanage on the hill, killing all the children housed within. Tragic accident, it read. But the details were sparse. The number of children never specified. No list of names. It felt like a story deliberately suppressed. Back in the house, the atmosphere grew heavier. I started hearing things. Faint children's laughter, brief melancholic hums. Sometimes a child's toy, a porcelain doll with a chipped face, would appear in a new location, its vacant eyes seeming to follow me. I would place it back on the shelf, only to find it on my pillow later. I started locking doors, even though I was alone.
I continued reading Elizabeth's journal. Her entries became more erratic, more desperate. December 1st, 1957. He watches them. He always watches. The children are afraid. I try to protect them, but he is too strong. The mirror, it shows what was and what will be. December 10th, 1957. The lullaby. It is not just a song. It is a key, a binding. He uses it. The children cry out for their mothers, but their voices are stolen. The entries began to make less and less sense. She spoke of the veil thinning, of the entity, of the loop. She was clearly terrified, convinced that something malevolent resided in the house.
One evening, as dusk bled across the sky, painting the windows in bruised purples and oranges, I was in the dining room, trying to dust the enormous table. A chill wind seemed to sweep through the room, though all the windows were closed. The air grew heavy, almost viscous. And then, I saw it. A fleeting shadow, too distinct to be my imagination, dart past the doorway leading to the kitchen. It was small, no taller than a child. My heart leaped into my throat. "Hello," I whispered, my voice trembling. Silence. Then, a low, sorrowful moan, as if from a deep well. It was a sound that seemed to vibrate in my bones. I backed away slowly, my eyes wide, scanning the dim corners of the room. The air grew colder, and then a faint scent filled the room. Wood smoke, and something else. Something cloying and sweet, like decaying flowers. I stumbled backwards, nearly tripping over a chair. My rational mind was screaming, but my senses were overwhelmed. I knew what I had just experienced wasn't normal. This house was alive. and it was hostile.
I fled upstairs, locking myself in what I decided was my grandmother's study, the one with the journal and the music box. I huddled in a worn armchair, clutching the journal like a shield. I flipped to a random page, desperate for answers. January 15th, 1958. He grows stronger. The children are fading. Their memories, their very forms, dissolving. He feeds on their fear, their forgotten existence. I must save them. I must break the loop. Sarah must know. My name was in her journal. My grandmother knew I would come here. A cold dread seeped into me, deeper than any chill. This wasn't a random occurrence. I was part of this.
The next few days blurred into a waking nightmare. The visions grew more vivid, more persistent. I saw children, their faces pale and streaked with soot, their eyes wide with terror, standing in hallways, staring at me with silent pleas. I heard their desperate cries, sometimes faint, sometimes so loud they felt like they were inside my skull. The weeping woman, my grandmother, appeared more often, her image shimmering, her arms outstretched, her mouth opening in a silent scream. She was trying to tell me something, to warn me. The time distortion became frighteningly real. I would be walking down the stairs and suddenly find myself at the bottom, without any memory of the descent. Or I would be in one room, blink, and find myself in another, a sense of having lost minutes or even hours. Once I saw my own reflection in a dusty mirror, but for a split second, it wasn't my face staring back. It was an older woman's face, etched with fear and desperation. My grandmother's face.
I tried to leave. I packed my car, got in, started the engine. But as I reached the end of the long driveway, a thick, impenetrable fog rolled in from nowhere, swallowing the road ahead. I couldn't see anything. I tried to turn around, but the steering wheel felt heavy, unresponsive. A sudden wave of nausea washed over me, so intense I nearly vomited. My head pounded. I felt an undeniable pull, like a physical tether, drawing me back to the house. I slumped against the steering wheel, defeated. This place wasn't just haunted, it was a prison. I found myself back in the study, driven by an instinct I couldn't explain. I opened the journal again, desperate, frantic. Elizabeth's later entries were almost illegible, scrawled with a desperate hand. February 20th, 1958. He takes them piece by piece, their hopes, their innocence, their very being. Elias Thorne, the founder, the architect of their suffering. He built this house not as a home, but as a cage, a ritual site. Elias Thorne, the man in the photograph with my grandmother, the founder of Blackwood Creek. I remembered the old newspaper clipping about the orphanage fire. Blackwood Creek, Elias Thorne, Ashwood Manor. It was all connected. March 5th, 1958. The mine collapse. It was no accident, a deliberate act. He needed the unclaimed, the orphans, for the ritual, the fire, the final sacrifice. He seeks power, immortality. He feeds on their despair. He twists the flow of time here, makes them relive it, makes them suffer forever. The words swam before my eyes, cold terror gripping me. The mine collapse, the orphanage, the fire. It was all a calculated act. Elias Thorne was not just a historical figure. He was a monster. And this house, Ashwood Manor, was his altar. He had orchestrated the deaths of innocent children, trapping their souls here, making them relive their torment for his own dark purpose. And my grandmother, Elizabeth, had known. She had lived with this horror.
I paced the study, my mind racing. Elias Thorne, he wanted immortality, power. He used the children. And the house was a temporal prison, forcing the spirits to endure their suffering repeatedly. My grandmother, Elizabeth, had been trying to break the cycle, to release them. And she mentioned my name. Sarah must know. But know what?
I remembered her cryptic entry about the mirror. I started searching the study, running my hands over every surface, pushing against walls. I noticed a slight discoloration on a section of a bookshelf. I pushed. With a click and a grinding sound, a section of books swung inwards, revealing a dark, narrow passage, a hidden door. My heart hammered against my ribs. I grabbed a flashlight from my backpack and stepped into the darkness. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of dust and something metallic. The passage descended steeply, a winding staircase of rough-hewn stone. It felt ancient, predating the house itself. At the bottom, a heavy wooden door, bound with rusted iron straps, stood before me. I pushed. It groaned, grudgingly opening into a vast circular chamber, clearly built into the earth beneath the house.
The chamber was unsettlingly bare, save for a large circular stone altar in the center, stained dark with age. Carved into the walls were strange, angular symbols I didn't recognize, symbols that seemed to writhe and pulse in the beam of my flashlight. And on a small wooden table to the side were tools, unsettling tools. Thin, sharpened blades, intricate silver implements, and what looked like a tarnished, ancient censer. Beside them, tiny, threadbare pieces of children's clothing. A small ragged doll, a wooden soldier, headless, and more journals. My grandmother's journals, piled high. I picked up the top one. Ashwood Manor. Final entries.
April 1st, 1958. I found it. The true chamber. His sanctum. He plans to draw them in, to siphon their residual energy, not just for power, but for a vessel, to return, to truly live again. A vessel. Elias Thorne wanted a vessel. My blood ran cold. April 10th, 1958. The time here, it bends to his will. He can pull the past into the present. He can make us relive it. He wants to break their spirits completely before he consumes them. He uses the lullaby. It calms them, makes them vulnerable. He needs a specific lineage, my bloodline, to birth him anew. My bloodline. My stomach twisted. My grandmother and me, we were connected to him. This wasn't just a house of ghosts. It was a dark ancestral trap. April 15th, 1958. He knows I am fighting him. He taunts me with visions, makes me watch the fire again and again. He is trying to possess me, to use me to bring Sarah here. Sarah, you are his final key, his perfect vessel. The air in the chamber grew frigid. The chilling truth, a cold, hot stone in my gut. I wasn't just an heir. I was bait. I was the intended recipient of Elias Thorne's twisted return. The entire inheritance, the letter, my grandmother's plan. It was all to draw me here. But was she trying to save me or lead me to my doom?
Then, the chamber began to change. The flickering beam of my flashlight seemed to dim, swallowed by a growing darkness. The ancient symbols on the wall began to glow with a faint, malevolent red light. A deep hum, like a grinding stone, emanated from the altar. And then I saw them. Children. Dozens of them. Their translucent forms shimmered in the gloom, their eyes filled with unimaginable sorrow. They were huddled together, weeping silently. And behind them, a taller, shadowy figure began to coalesce. A man. His form was indistinct at first, like smoke, but slowly, inexorably, it solidified. Tall, gaunt, dressed in old-fashioned clothing, his face gaunt, his eyes were pits of absolute blackness. Elias Thorne.
He wasn't a ghost. He was something else. An echo, a fragment, a malevolent consciousness. He smiled, a slow, predatory smile that stretched his skeletal face. "Welcome home, Sarah." His voice was a dry rasp, like leaves skittering across pavement, but it filled the chamber, reverberating in my bones. "You finally arrived." The children recoiled from him, their silent cries intensifying. My grandmother's image flickered behind Thorne, her face a mask of anguish, silently screaming at me to run, to fight. Elizabeth tried to stop me. Thorn rasped, his black eyes fixed on me. Poor, foolish Elizabeth. She thought she could break the cycle. She thought she could save you. But the blood calls to the blood, Sarah. Your essence is intertwined with mine. You are a thorn. You carry the spark, the perfect vessel. He took a step towards me, and the air crackled with a dark energy. The symbols on the wall blazed brighter. The very fabric of the chamber seemed to warp, the stone walls stretching, breathing. The time here, he continued, a mocking quality in his voice. It is not merely distorted. It is a membrane, a thinning. This chamber is the nexus, the gateway, and you are the key to tearing it open completely.
My mind raced. Grandmother's entries flashed before my eyes. He uses the lullaby. It is a binding. The music box, the constant haunting melody in my head. Had it been working on me all this time? A form of hypnotic suggestion? Thorn extended a spectral hand towards me. Come, Sarah, join me. Embrace your legacy. We shall transcend this mortal coil forever. The children began to wail, a soundless scream of pure agony. My grandmother's image pulsed, shimmering, desperate. I gripped the flashlight, my knuckles white, intelligent, brave, but psychologically breaking. I felt myself teetering on the edge of a precipice, my sanity fraying like an old rope. No, I choked out, my voice weak but firm. I won't let you. Thorn chuckled, a dry, rattling sound. Foolish girl, you have no choice. Your journey here, your inheritance, your very thoughts, they have all been guided, orchestrated. What are you talking about? I demanded, my voice gaining a desperate strength. He pointed a skeletal finger at the music box, which I now realized I was clutching subconsciously. It had somehow made its way from the study desk into my hand. It was playing faintly, the melancholic lullaby, insidious, hypnotic. The lullaby, Thorn whispered. It is a charm, a whisper into the subconscious. It has been singing to you since you first touched it, Sarah, gently guiding your steps, dulling your will, preparing you. He took another step, closer now. His eyes, those black pits, seemed to bore into my soul. You believe you came here by your own free will. You believe you are fighting me now. Such naive bravery. You have been mine since the moment you crossed the threshold of this manor. Every moment of fear, every discovery, every shred of knowledge you gained, it was all part of the process. My process. The words hit me like a physical blow. The creeping dread, the feeling of being watched, the subtle manipulation of my thoughts, the inability to leave. It wasn't just a curse. It was a conscious, deliberate assault on my mind. My grandmother's warnings about the lullaby, the binding, they weren't just general advice. They were specific to me. Thorn grinned, a triumphant, terrifying expression. Elizabeth tried to resist. She was too strong, too stubborn. But you, Sarah, you are open. You are lost. You are seeking purpose. The perfect host for my return.
He extended his hand fully. Now, surrender. Let me in. Let us complete the ritual that was interrupted so long ago. My grandmother's spectral form flared, briefly becoming more solid, more vibrant. She stood between me and Thorn, her eyes burning with an intense love and desperate sadness. She pointed a trembling finger, not at Thorn, but at me. Then her lips moved, forming a single silent word. Remember. Remember what? I choked out, tears stinging my eyes. The chamber was spinning, the faces of the children blurring with the image of Thorn and my grandmother. Remember what you truly are. Thorn's voice cut through the chaos, closer now, right beside my ear. His breath was cold, like grave air. You are not just a thorn, Sarah. You are the culmination, the vessel, the chosen one. Then a sudden blinding flash of white light erupted from the altar. The symbols on the walls flared violently. The hum grew into a deafening roar. I screamed, clutching my head, the music box falling from my grasp, its lullaby abruptly silencing. And in that moment of blinding light and deafening sound, a single, horrifying memory, not mine, but utterly vivid, tore through my mind.
I was standing, not as Sarah, but as a man. I felt a surge of immense power, of triumph. I saw a grand stone chamber filled with terrified children. I saw flames raging, consuming everything. I saw a woman, defiant, trying to fight me, trying to save them. Elizabeth, my grandmother, and I was the one igniting the fire. I was chanting strange, guttural words, and then I saw my own face, the man's face, reflected in the shining blade I held. It was Elias Thorne.
The light faded. The roar subsided to a low hum. The children were gone. Thorne was gone. My grandmother was gone. I was alone in the chamber. The altar stood silent, dark. The symbols on the walls were dull again. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. My breath hitched. My hands were shaking. I looked down at them. They were my hands. Sarah's hands. But they felt different. Stronger. Older. The chilling memory of being Elias Thorne, of igniting the fire, of feeling that perverse power was so fresh, so real it was as if it had just happened. I stumbled out of the hidden chamber, up the winding stairs, back into the study. The music box lay on the floor where it had fallen. I stared at it. The lullaby, the binding, the whispers, the guidance. It wasn't just to prepare me. It was to awaken him within me.
I went to the mirror, the large, dusty mirror in the hallway. I stared at my reflection, my own face, but my eyes seemed deeper, darker, older. And then I spoke. Elizabeth. My voice was not my own. It was deeper, raspier, tinged with a chilling triumph. You tried to stop me. You never could. The twist wasn't that I was a descendant or a reincarnated victim. It wasn't that I was the key to breaking the curse. The twist was that I was Elias Thorne. He had been within me, dormant, since the beginning. The inheritance wasn't to draw Sarah to Ashwood Manor. It was to draw Elias Thorne back to his nexus, back to his source of power. My grandmother hadn't been trying to warn me from the past. She had been trapped in a separate temporal loop, eternally fighting the true Elias Thorne, the consciousness that had taken root in my body. She had been trying to warn Elias through Sarah in a desperate, final, futile attempt to reach the sliver of Sarah's soul that remained. But it was too late. The lullaby had worked. The journey had completed the transformation. The binding was absolute. I raised a hand, tracing the outline of my reflection. My eyes, Elias Thorne's eyes, glinted with a terrible, ancient hunger. "The loop will be broken," I said, my voice rich with Elias Thorne's malevolence. "But not in the way you hoped, Elizabeth." I looked out the window, at the desolate town of Blackwood Creek, at the bruised sky. The ritual will be completed. The music box, lying forgotten on the floor of the study, began to play again, the melancholy lullaby. But this time, it didn't sound sad. It sounded triumphant. And I, Sarah, the young woman who came seeking a fresh start, was gone. Only Elias Thorne remained, looking out from Ashwood Manor, ready to claim his true immortality. And the true horror was, I had chosen this, believing it was my escape. It was only an awakening.